my long-awaited guest. We spoke to him, I think it was just before Christmas.
It was.
On the telephone. Dr. Butterworth, who is the chaplaincy, the lead chaplaincy no less, for the NEC Group. And you're thinking about NEC Group? That used to be the National Exhibition Centre for Birmingham. It actually still is. One of the biggest centres in Birmingham in terms of exhibitions. They're leading on live events, over 750 events a year, over some 7 million people attend, and like I said, over some 1,500 employees, and I'm sure there's more, because David is going to tell us about that. So I've got David in the studio, and just want to say welcome to you, David.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I've been here before, so it's glad to be sitting in this chair.
Fabulous. So you're part of the family then, really?
I am.
Bit like myself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a wide family.
Indeed. It is a wide family and a diverse family in our super diverse Birmingham.
Absolutely.
Which, like you, I'm very proud to be part of Birmingham.
Yeah.
I've lived here all my life and I love living here. All my family's here. First, second, third, fourth, and just about fifth generation now.
Okay.
So we're Brummers through and through. And Birmingham is a great place to live. I say that every week. And so, David, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
And we want to talk to you today about your role within the chaplaincy of the NEC Group. But before we do that, just tell us a little bit about you and who you are and your pathway to leading into chaplaincy.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for the invitation. And so I'm Reverend David Butterworth, not Doctor.
Okay, thank you for the correction.
So Reverend David Butterworth, I'm a Methodist Church minister, and I'm what's called a district officer for the Methodist Church in the Birmingham region. Birmingham is massive. It's not just Birmingham city centre. Mm-hmm. It's like to the top end of near Wolverhampton, Leamington Spa, down by Hereford.
It's the whole of West Midlands.
It's the whole of nearly the whole of the West Midlands.
Yeah.
And so I really love Birmingham. I've been here about 6 years now, and I was brought into Birmingham expressly to look after the National Exhibition Centre, the NEC Group, and also encourage chaplains where they are and encourage chaplaincy where it is not yet, because it's one of those growing areas of well-being and concern for people. And you mentioned earlier stretching out hands to welcome people. That's what chaplaincy does. Brilliant. And I'm really pleased because the founder of Methodism, if we can call him that, John Wesley, he had a mantra which I use so often in many different places. His mantra was, "May I call you friend?"
What a fantastic mantra.
Yeah, and that was a lovely, polite way of saying, "Hi, how are you?" In those days, 300 years ago. So I continue using that methodology, and sometimes not even using the word, because a smile, a glance in the right direction, just a nod of the head to acknowledge somebody else's humanity, whatever ethnicity, whatever gender, whatever spirituality, whatever sexuality, just say hi and say, how are you? And they may not respond with words. Yeah. Sometimes they respond with expletives to me, like, what the F is a vicar doing here?
Indeed.
But that's a lovely way of entering into a conversation.
Yes, at least they've acknowledged you.
At least they've acknowledged my presence, and I'm really pleased at that. So I became a Methodist minister less than 20 years ago, and I've got a heart for people, and I'm so pleased that the Methodist Church saw and recognised that. So I'm not a Methodist minister that's inside church walls most of his or her time. I am expressly outside of the church walls all of the time, and so very often you'll find me at the NEC near the Birmingham Airport. And it's not just Birmingham's biggest event centre, it's one of Europe's leading event centres, and it's like on a global stage. And we should really be pleased about that, because actually it's a centre that was built over 40 years ago as a regeneration, resurrection type of environment to give Birmingham loads of jobs and loads of interest and loads of welcome space to people from all over the world. So I take my hat off to the people that started the NEC 40-something years ago. And
That's right, it is 40 years.
Yeah, more than 40.
Yeah.
I take my hat off to the people that are running it today, because they're people-centred.
Fantastic.
People are the best assets of the business, and they really, really mean that sincerely.
So, David, I'm going to take you. And that's brilliant, because I remember when that that NEC group started, I was probably in my early 20s then.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you're a boy.
I know, but again, that's the thing about Birmingham. I was around when it really started. Everything started to develop. So it's fantastic. We were actually there. So Methodism, and it's very difficult as a person of faith myself. Sometimes we can get caught up in the four walls, can't we?
We can.
And we can forget what the mission is. And I'm going to call it the mission because we have to somehow define what mission means in 2020. And often, and again, I hang out with a lot of Methodists and a lot of Anglicans recently. And, that is the conversation we're having. Actually, what is mission?
Yeah.
And how did, Jesus himself, how did he connect with so many people? In fact, when he was very rarely inside the four walls. And I think that is such a refreshing thing in 2020 where we can say, actually, as people of faith, again, as we say, whether we're, Christian, whether we're Muslim, whether we're Jew, Gentile, whoever, we can still connect. And the challenge is actually to dare to step outside the mosque or, your church building and connect with, the wider and diverse world that we live in.
And also I'd like to stretch that description too, that, our pagan brothers and sisters, our humanist brothers and sisters, all of us are equal in God's sight, whether we recognise a God or our God or the God one God. We're all called to love each other. And it's when you see people not being loved or not stretching out that hand of friendship to everybody inclusively that you can see hurt and damage and well-being going down the drain. So I'm so pleased that I've got this opportunity to be in and around the wider Birmingham region, just saying, let's be ambassadors of love. Let's get on with that. That's the mission, and it's not my mission or your mission or the church's mission. It's God's mission. Yeah. It's God who's inspired you and me and others to love our neighbours.
And if that is the Great Commission, how is it that we in Birmingham, others can do that quite readily, but yet there is still that reluctancy, that little bit of isolation, that little bit of almost lack of engagement with those who appear to be on the margin or the others. How is it that we are still failing in certain areas to demonstrate the love and the compassion that we talk about?
I think our history has a lot to answer for. Our colonialism, where we think we can rule and tell people what to do, that's come back and bitten us on the bottom, as it were.
Indeed.
We've got that crazy thing called the British stiff upper lip, which is also some places the kiss of death, because we think we can't go and say hello to somebody that we've not been introduced to properly. We've still got those old-fashioned statements flying around business and industry, and indeed church and other spaces. I'm above them, or my station is here, or... And that's just ridiculous. We need to climb down from our pulpits or our spaces that have been elevated in the past and actually get on the ground and speak to people. And that's where chaplaincy really proves its dividend for the wider community. So, utilising the NEC as an example this afternoon, I can be in Hall 1 to 5 or Hall 19 or Hall 20. I can stretch out my hand and say hello. And some people will say hello back. Often they'll go straight into where it hurts them, and they'll say, when I needed the church, the doors were locked, the numbers were not right on the signposts. When I got to the church, there were 6 doors. Which one do I go in? People think it's all easy peasy. It ain't. Even if they're only shallow steps, those steps are high. Some of our churches in the Birmingham region that are built on these old elevated situations have got 12 or 20 steps to get to the bloody front door.
Yes,
what's that about? With no access for people that have infirmity.
It's high church, isn't it?
Yeah, that really is high church. It really is high church in many, many different ways.
Absolutely.
And I can be high church, we've got a saying sometimes in Christian circles that oh, he or she is high up the candle, inferring they're a bit closer to Rome. Well, I love being closer to Rome, but I also like being on the ground.
Absolutely.
And the new Pope we've got is just incredible, the way he's thrown away the red shoes, and he's thrown away his limousine, and he's thrown away his palace, and he's with the people, and he's shaking hands and saying hello to people that really have, in the past, I think, been pushed to the margins.
Brilliant. And that is, for me, a really good example of how we generally, right across the face, can start connecting with, a very vulnerable grouping of people that somehow are still, even in 2020, are on the margins. We're seeing homelessness more than ever. The links to mental health, as we know, are bigger and growing increasingly. And even though we can see where there's some good examples, we just seem to think, actually, we should be doing more.
Well, we wait often with that reserved Britishness, stiff upper lip aspect, that we wait until there's a crisis, and then when the house is on fire, we call the police or the fire brigade. But actually, we can see the inadequacies or where people need help. In universities, I have some responsibility in a couple of West Midlands leading universities, and young kids come out of school where they're loved to bits by their teachers often, or their social worker, or their families, their brothers and sisters, their grandparents and aunties. Then they go into a university where they might be reduced to having 6 or 7 hours contact time. That's bad enough, and that's why we're seeing a lot of grief in some of the universities. But places like Warwick and Birmingham and Aston and Birmingham City and Coventry, they've got wonderful spirituality centres, often called a student hub or whatever it's called. But they've got chaplaincy inside that with other trained people as well to offer good signposts early. But actually sometimes when students leave those universities where they have been cared for, as well as society can care for them, they go into businesses. And that loneliness can be exacerbated in a business, because nobody likes to be recognised or pointed out as the new person in the space, not knowing any of the answers. And of course, none of us know all the answers because we don't know half the questions.
Indeed.
So a space and a place that's got good well-being at its heart, like Birmingham Mental Health Trust with Solihull in its partnership, and the NEC and other spaces and places like Birmingham City Council and the Fire Brigade and the police, then people can say, well, there are signposts.
Brilliant.
But as just men and women in the high street with our families or our work colleagues, we need to be able to see where the alarm signs are and say, can I help you?
And I think therein lies. So you are now the chaplaincy at the NEC Group, as well as the large workforce that you have there. There's, again, some 7 million people pass through there by the stats that I've got. How do you even begin to do it's, and I know you do it brilliantly. So, I'm just saying, so just for our listeners, given all that we've just said about how diverse we are as a city as Birmingham, how do you even begin to start chaplaincy? Not only for the workforce, which is huge, and we haven't mentioned is it FTEs, which is some 29,000. And you can tell us what that means in a few minutes. But also, the 7 million people that might pass through there, and they'll see you. You're there. Everyone can see that you're a chaplain, and I guarantee someone's going to come over and say something to you. How do you even begin to start to engage on that kind of level?
Some days I don't know the answer to that question. Actually, some days I think, what am I doing in this space? How is it I'm here? Sometimes I'll retreat into the prayer room and say that to God. What am I doing here? What can I do here? But actually I'm there with the support of a lot of other people. I'm not there by myself. I'm there with the blessing and the support of the wider church, with the wider community, my family who have made sacrifices over the year that I'm paid a stipend as a Methodist church minister rather
than
a salary.
Oh, okay.
It's a lesser salary than one would receive in industry. I can say that. Okay. And I work in an environment at the NEC or the ICC or the Utilita arena, as it's now called, with its new naming rights. I'm there with the blessing of senior management and the exec team and the HR team. And the HR team are 25 amazing people. And They've got infrastructure in to help with mental health and well-being ambassadors. About 60 people do that. And they've got Your Voice programs so that they listen. And there's a structure to be able to listen to people and for people, members of staff, to say, this is what I think. And the doors are always open. But you've got 7 million people coming through those doors. And so over the last few years, I've tried to widen the portfolio of volunteers that come in to support that. Let me give you an example. So at the Utilita Arena in Birmingham now, just going back a few months ago, we had Ariana Grande coming back into Birmingham.
You were telling me about this earlier.
Thank goodness. And so me and 4 chaplains.
Maybe we just should give a bit of a context in terms of Ariana Grande and
absolutely. Ariana Grande is a world famous singer for
pop
some people,
for young people.
If you're over a certain age, you may not know that. But she's where it's at with music and everything that's vibrant, and she has a very diverse audience as well, of young people, older people, and amazing spectrum. So in Manchester a couple of years ago, there was some awful atrocity where a lot of people were maimed and killed, and she came into Birmingham just a few short weeks later. I was called by a senior person at the arena to be present at that 3-day concert. As chaplain, I wear a clerical collar, and I'm supported by other chaplains as well. And mums and dads and young people coming into the doors and the spaces as they were coming through the doors, offering their tickets, having their bag searches and their pat. They were so pleased in some cases to see the chaplain present. But I'm also present for the staff briefings, because the staff of the NEC group and the arenas, etc., are key to making the event successful. Without them being smiling and professional and caring and well-trained and well-versed
and welcoming,
the event would just be lackluster. So move forward 2 years now to a few months ago, she came back into Birmingham Utilita Arena, and I was there with 4 volunteer chaplains, a lovely Seventh-day Adventist, an Anglican chaplain, a Methodist chaplain, different gender, different ethnicity, and we were wearing our green ribbons, symbolising that we were part of the mental health well-being. But again, we were not alone. We were supported by some of the members of staff from the NEC group, who have been trained as mental health ambassadors and signposts, and also by some of the business partners of the NEC group called CBRE and OCS, who have also got fully trained mental health well-being ambassadors that can actually be easily recognisable in that wider business. So going back to the arena when Ariana Grande there were probably 15 of us.
Excellent.
All easily identifiable with our green ribbons, and all of us willing to be helpful to everybody, and it didn't matter what the colour of their hair was, or how high or low their dresses, or how rainbow coloured their shirts were. We celebrated their diversity.
Excellent.
And they could see us welcoming them with open arms and just quietly being there if they needed a conversation. And some did, because they were overwrought remembering the previous Manchester atrocity, but then overall, because they're young people mostly, come to this most exciting event space and place that they'd ever dreamt of, and the music's loud, and sometimes the young people have panic attacks, or they're worried, or they lose mum, or dad's just popped out of sight. And so with a trained eye, with an eye that's a bit discerning and looking, you can identify that and actually quietly, discreetly, with all the safeguarding ramifications in place, say, how can I help you? And it's a bit like that John Wesley thing. May I call you friend?
Yeah.
So it travels through time.
And what kind of help is that in terms of, what kind of things are they asking for?
They're asking, am I okay? Am I safe?
Yeah.
Am I safe is a key one. I'm in this massive place with 18,000 people. Am I safe? I feel vulnerable. I need to know I'm safe. Am I welcome in this space? Is there somebody that will take care of me? And often we'll know where there's a quiet room to take them to. That's been agreed with our security hosts and our wellbeing team beforehand. They're available on most of the floors. They're signposted well with the welcome and host people that are taking care of that event, and we can say quietly sit here, and we'll stay with you as long as it takes, or we'll wait until your mum and dad come back, or whatever it might be, or indeed it may be a mum and dad that needs a conversation.
Indeed.
They may be going through a rough patch at work, or a really nightmare position with their family life, or with their partner, or a bereavement of a grandma or somebody that's precious in their life. And sometimes when they see a chaplain, all of a sudden all of that angst just bubbles up and it bursts out.
Indeed.
And so sometimes when I stretch out my hand in Hall 1 or Hall 19 and say, hello, how are you? They won't tell me how they are. They'll immediately say, I've just been told I've got cancer.
Wow.
And I've got nobody else in the world to share it with. And the world stops. You know, just like this conversation, it stops. And it's just a point where I think, for those of us who have a faith, I think that's the point where God intervenes, and I shut up and just let them speak.
Yeah.
And even if they don't speak, often we're still holding the hand in the handshake, or whatever it might be, if a handshake's not appropriate for a Muslim lady. You know, my hand is on my heart, visibly, so she can see that I'm really welcoming and respecting her faith.
And that's important.
That's so important that we know
very important.
Those nuances.
Absolutely.
And so they're looking that they're accepted and safe and welcome. And that might be a fleeting 1 or 2 minutes, or it could be for a couple of hours if somebody's got a significant issue that they need to be taken care of. Because sometimes I've met people that have burst into the chaplaincy office and they've said, hello, I'm here on the wrong day, at the wrong event, and I've got no idea why I'm here. How can that be that I'm here? Actually, they sit down, and the reason they're there is to actually speak to somebody.
And they're meant to be there.
And they're meant to be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's somebody that they know that will listen to them. And I can remember years ago an older Methodist minister saying to me, very wisely, don't fill your diary. Keep some spaces in your diary for God. Let God intervene and let God bring to you the people that need to be with you. So back at the NEC again, I can often be in the early hours of the morning or late at night, on Saturday or on Sunday. My phone's in my pocket, and my desk phone diverts to my phone in my pocket. And I've been outside church steps, waiting to lead the morning worship on a Sunday, and my phone will ring. Naturally, I take that call, and it will often be somebody saying, David, I'm at my wit's end. Can I see you this afternoon? My answer is yes. It could be through a suicide of a brother, or it could be that they're feeling suicidal. Or it might be that they've just got a quiet window in their busy diary and their work schedule that they can actually make that call with nobody else listening. But they know that call will be taken, and they know that I will respond appropriately. Yeah,
and David, that real-time kind of response is so important in the busy world that we live in. And that's why, you know, when we first met, you know, just before Christmas, I was thinking, NEC group, I know that's one of the busiest places in the world. Or if you're at an event, Oria Grande in particular, someone somewhere will still need that real-time response. And we should be doing more of that, I think, in the city.
Yes.
And I think we're going to talk about that after the break, because I think moments like this where we're on air, we're talking about real life, real-time issues, this is where we connect with people in a way that we just wouldn't do ordinarily. So I'm in the studio, as you can tell, with Reverend David Butterworth, and we're talking about, you know, just general health and well-being and the importance of really connecting and engaging with people. Because actually, myself and David and all the people that come in the studio, we actually enjoy that part of life where we connect with people in a real way. So if you listen to this program, which I know you are, please give us a call, 0121 772 8892. We're going to go for a short break, and we want you to join in. And then we're going to go back to David after the break. Thank you. So, David, we're going to talk about, you know, again, just in case you're wondering, we're talking to Reverend David Butterworth, who is a chaplain at the NEC Group, National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham, and also does some chaplaincy work around two of our biggest universities in Birmingham. Remind me what the first one is. It's Worcester, did you say?
There is chaplaincy at Worcester, but there's primary chaplaincy at the University of Birmingham. Aston University, Birmingham City University, Warwick, Coventry, and most universities have chaplaincy, and most of the chaplaincy environments are interfaith, multi-context environments that care for everybody.
Brilliant. And in that caring, are we seeing chaplaincy grow because of the levels of need that is out there?
We're seeing it grow because of the level of need, yes. But we're seeing it grow because people are now realising it doesn't have to be a vicar or a priest or an imam that does it. Just going back before Christmas again, we held a conference for chaplains, and 95 people booked to come. I would say the majority of those people were lay people, that is voluntary people that are like Amelia, might have been solicitors or nurses or other people, younger students, early retired men and women that are looking to give something back to community, and through listening skills they may have encountered a chaplain in the services or in the hospital or hospice or even in a shopping centre. You know, we have chaplains in the Birmingham Bullring, in the Palisades, Town Hall, Symphony Hall, Birmingham City Council. Wow. The list goes on. The open markets, the indoor markets, all of them have chaplains.
And I'm not sure our community is aware of that.
Not at all. So, you know, whose fault is that? If there is a fault, if there's a finger wagging, as it were, and I was blessed by living in the Netherlands for a couple of years, and I learnt that the Dutch folk never point a finger. Because actually, if you point one finger at somebody else, there's at least three pointing back at you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So perhaps the church and the faith communities and our humanist brothers and sisters and pagan brothers and sisters have a job to do about marketing and awareness and PR.
And I think we touched earlier on about that real-time response. So, you know, people are probably wandering around the bullring or wherever they're wandering around or going on about their daily business. And if they were to just think, actually, you know what, if they knew there was a space, and we call it a space, where they could probably go and talk to someone, how would they know? What should we be doing more of, or how can we inform people that we're there? Because to me, that's what people need more than anything else. Sometimes they haven't got the relationship with their GPs, because we know that as someone that works for the trust, and they always say, well, actually, my relationship is not that great with my GP, even though that's the first port of call for most health and well-being issues. But if they're walking through the bullring, for example, how can we make some noise, if you like, about chaplaincy?
Yeah, well, the chaplains are there making their own noise. Often a chaplain isn't making too much noise because they're listening.
Literally, yeah, of course.
They're listening to other people. However,
the spaces, where are the chaplain spaces?
Spaces and places are easily identifiable. In the railway station at New Street, massive investment in that amazing architecture.
Beautiful.
Chaplaincy is there. There's a prayer room there for everybody. There are railway chaplains with Virgin, and there are other well-known railway stations and railway companies too. But to use the good example of the NEC group, for example, if you were looking for a job within the NEC suite of campus points, immediately when you're on the internet looking for a job at the NEC, you'll see that chaplaincy is available. When you arrive at the NEC, in your induction program, you'll be told that there's wellbeing suite of support, including a chaplain. I meet new people coming into the NEC on their first few weeks or first month in the business. Then on the intranet, and that's the inside internet for the business, we have spaces and places as well. Then when people have an issue that they want to talk about, and it may be a happy thing or a sad thing, a birth or a death or a marriage or a relationship issue, people will signpost to chaplaincy. I'm part of a group, a long-standing group in Birmingham called Churches in Industry Group of Birmingham. Not terribly snappy in its title, but its acronym is CIGB. And we have 50, 60 chaplains all over the wider Birmingham region. And then there are other chaplaincy organisations that help chaplaincy in the law confines of the Birmingham setting too. So a couple of years ago, I was invited to speak at the University of Law in Birmingham. I didn't know there was one. I thought the University of Law were in London and Chester, but hey presto, we've got one in the Jewellery Quarter.
Wow.
I went and spoke about chaplaincy. 75 HR consultants and lecturers there said, wow, we didn't know all this. Another organisation called Chaplaincy Plus opened that door, asked me to speak as a practitioner. And the University of Law said, well, we do want chaplaincy. Now we realise it's there, but we want it to look like the NEC chaplaincy. It's got to have good practice, and it's got to have good methodology and good training, and it has to be inclusive at its heart.
Absolutely, inclusive at its heart. And why don't you join us? 012 772 8892. This is an inclusive program, and as you know, for the last couple of years, we will speak to you because Birmingham is important to us, and I'm hearing spiritual engagement. That's what I'm hearing, and David's, as he's speaking to me more and more, and the importance of chaplaincy, and it's becoming clearly a popular thing that people actually want. Which, it's free, people don't have to pay for it, and just to get the opportunity to speak to someone, because at the end of the day, whether you accept it or not, we are spiritual beings, and it's important to have someone somewhere that randomly, if you need to speak to someone, you should be able to know where they are. In fact, you might even want to become a chaplain.
Absolutely, and there are training programs on the doorstep.
So if you are thinking, actually, I could be a chaplain, where would we go, David?
Give me a call. Send me an email. Look for me on Twitter. I'll be your friend tomorrow, or even later this afternoon, by responding positively and say, here are some signposts. I've been to the Central Mosque in Birmingham to talk about chaplaincy. I've been to the Gurdwara. I've been to other places and spaces. My good friend Rabbi Margaret Jacobi at the Progressive Synagogues in Birmingham. We're all ready and wanting to listen to people say, actually, I feel called to help somebody else.
Absolutely.
I don't know how I do that, and I'm not used to using the word calling, they might say, but actually something's churning in my stomach or my gut or my heart to help other people. And I think this quiet way of supporting people could be just that opening.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you, hand on heart, it can be life-saving. So people might... I'm going goosebumpy sharing this with you now. Yeah. Some people might come to me and their team in another part of the business or another part of the community will say, we don't know what chaplaincy does. We know we've got a chaplain in the business. Actually, we think, your team think you need to see the chaplain. So I might end up with a young man or a woman sitting in front of me of any faith and of no faith. Yeah. And they might say, I don't know what you do, my team don't know what you do, but they've said, I think you need to go and spend half an hour with the chaplain.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you, it can save lives. And I know it saves lives.
Absolutely.
And that I don't say that with any sense of importance at all. In fact, as I said earlier, in the quiet time when Amelia was talking, I'm moved to tears very often by listening to somebody's story, because you're really listening.
Absolutely.
We're not just letting it go in one ear and out the other. It actually comes in one ear, drops into our heart, and it stays there, because the people in front of us matter.
Absolutely. And as we were saying earlier, it's that early intervention where somebody who cares enough, first and foremost, and to demonstrate that compassion and then ultimately listen and often give the right kind of response.
Yeah. And I think faith communities do need to wake up and think about people outside their walls. The Methodist Church, for example, in recent years has got a new mantra saying church without walls. I'd rather it be love without walls. Let's be out there and with people and garnering support and encouraging people to share with each other and just have a coffee or a cup of tea with somebody. And again, to use that phrase, it can be a lifesaver.
Absolutely.
Rather than castigate people because they don't have my faith or they don't understand my theological position, let's not get into those arguments. It's about love.
100%. Love, compassion, and again, whatever term you want to use. Clearly, again, in this city of Birmingham, there are people here who care about this city, and they care enough to talk about you and your situation. And I say this most weeks, we don't want you to sit there and suffer in silence. If you are suffering any at all. And again, last week there was a father who ran into the program, and I've spoken to him since about his concern for his own son, and we're going to follow that up, and I'm hoping to speak to him again next week. Outside of this program, because people, have access. This is what this program is about. It's trying to give people access to information and other people who can help. So again, don't sit there in silence. We want you to join in. And again, if you don't feel able to come onto this program, certainly ring into the studio afterwards, and we'll take your call. So David, we're going to go in about 60 seconds.
Okay.
Just give us, I'm going to call it a thought for the day, or a thought for this last 30 seconds.
Okay. I think I'd reflect on something that Kennedy said years ago. Don't think what your country or your community can do for you. Think what you can do for your community.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter where they're from. Well, it does matter because it's special to them.
Absolutely.
And celebrate where they're from, celebrate who they are, the languages they speak, the sexuality they are, the clothing they wear. Celebrate them and say, how can I help you?
Brilliant. Reverend David Butterworth, thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
My privilege.
And I wish you all the best at the NEC. And if there's anything I can do to support you, I'd gladly be able to. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Bless you.
Take care.